Hello, welcome back to Fire's Gaming. My name is Ben, and today we're continuing on with Suzerain. So last time out, not a whole lot happened really. We're just starting to deal with some of the fallout from the Bernard Circus assassination. So let's go and pick it up here. Looks like we've got a couple of reports and 5 newspapers. So let's start with reports. So from the Cantonan Security Pact, CSP faction spotlights workers' rights in reports. Drawing international attention to the pressing issue of labor conditions, a faction within the Cantonan Security Pact, CSP, has released an insightful report on workers' rights within its member nations. As the CSP, consisting primarily of planned economies, grapples with the growing capitalist influence of Arcazia and the ETO, this report underscores the need for robust labor protections in the world. The document provides a thorough analysis of workers' rights and labor conditions within CSP member nations spanning several continents. It asserts that these nations surpass the global standard with an average minimum wage 45% higher and industrial sector unionization rates an impressive 95%. However, it also calls for action on issues such as the gender wage gap, averaging 12% within CSP nations. The report concludes by advocating for broader enforcement of rigorous labor laws, embodying the CSP's commitment to social and political justice. The CSP stance on workers' rights offers a strong counter-narrative to the ATO's capitalist orientations, emphasizing the alliance's commitment to socio-economic equity. That's cool. And from the Republic of Morelia expresses condolences for Circus. In the wake of Bernard Circus' untimely passing, President Alma Sultana of Morelia conveyed heartfelt condolences to the people of Sorlin. The leader recognized Circus as an influential poet and advocate for millennialist ideas, lamenting his loss as a blow to the literary and political world. She called for the memorialization of Circus' contribution to social discourse and reaffirmed Morello's commitment to the ideals he has espoused. Interesting, okay. A couple of nice brand new reports there we've definitely never seen before. Alright, oops. Didn't mean to scroll over. Let's go to the newspapers. So, from Wholesale Post, protests across Sorlin. Protests erupted around Sorlin after the death of Bernard Circus, many of which started peaceful but soon turned violent. Protesters with red youth flags were seen in most central cities around Sorlin, carrying out violent riots and organizing protests that disrupted much vital services from being delivered to the Sorlish people. Protesters held sit-ins, which were broken up by riot police with tear gas and water cannons in the regions of Berja, Island, and Gruny. Thousands of people poured into Republic Avenue in Lockhaven and Soul Square in Holzort in response to the Young Swords' attack. Similar protests around Sorlin soon turned into violent riots. Fantastic. Alright, from Sorlin today, protests in Gruny. Protests are taking place throughout the Gruny region in response to the assassination of Bernard Circus. The protesters raised their concerns about the Young Swords, the increased cost of living, and inequality prevalent in the country. Large rallies have been organized in city centers of Benfey and Bourne. A large congregation of Red Youth members have organized sit-ins and protests aimed at hampering public transport in the city of Volgan, which brought the city to a standstill for a few hours before riot police came to disperse large groups of protesters at transportation nodes. And from The Economists, the wrong economy. The government has made its decision to promote a planned economy, a decision which is based on flawed arguments of Solonomics. The economists believe in the free market economy for good reason. Now, before anyone calls us Arcasian sympathizers, we don't support the excessive form of capitalism Arcasia is spreading around the world like in Lesbia. Our belief is that a balance can exist where the government can support the private sector with government money. Businesses could take the needed economic planning burden off the shoulder of the government. We disagree with the planned economy simply because it can't properly micromanage everything in society where people need to be able to determine their own future. The Sorlish people don't deserve to be shackled, and it is sad to know that President Rain doesn't think the same way. Cool, I don't care. Alright, let's see here. Lockhaven Times, political chaos. Political violence has surrounded Sorlin since yesterday. While officials from the police claim to have the situation under control, protests are turning into riots and violent attacks occurring around the country. NFP and LUS call for protests. Kasar Keeper of the National Front Party called a rally to condemn communist influence from United Cantona and called the violent protesters traitors to Sorlin. These millennialists are roaming in our streets, conducting violent attacks in disguise as peaceful protesters. We can't let them exploit a man's murder, said Keeper in a press conference. On the other hand, the labor union of Sorlin has gathered to condemn nationalist violence in Sorlin. Protests gathered crowds of several thousands, and agitators from both sides in Holsard, and acts of vandalism occurred. Katarina Horton accused Keebner for provoking the public. Young Swords vandalized shops. A group of people with Young Swords flags vandalized a dozen shops in the trade district of Anarka, specifically targeting the British and Agnosaurus minorities. The shop owners who defended themselves were wounded in the attacks, and local police broke the groups apart. NFP office burned. A group of violent militants have assaulted the National Front Party headquarters in Morna and committed arson. Firefighters have been called to the scene where fires raged for hours on end. Several nearby houses burned to the ground before it was brought under control. Fantastic. Alright, last one we have is from the Radical. Unrest in Swordland. Arvery. Yesterday morning, hundreds of nationalists descended on the PFGP party office in Arvery after the supportive statements of Friends Richter about Bernard Circus. The office was stoned by the aggressive group and several civilians were wounded in the chaos. Later in the evening, another group of militants fired shots at 5 people who were inside the Communist Party's local office, killing 4. After receiving a gunshot complaint from the neighbors, police arrived at the scene to find 3 wounded and 1 dead. The ambulance was called, but didn't arrive in time to save the wounded. Jen. Protesters have gathered to condemn the murder of Bernard Circus in the nationalist stronghold of Jen. Tensions quickly increased when a countermarch of nationalists met the protesters. The 2 groups clashed and riot police had to intervene to disperse. 23 people, including a police officer, were wounded. Fantastic. So much violence. Well, let's see if we can do anything about that. And our first step is a security briefing on the threats against Swordland. I arrived in front of the doors leading to the Situation Room. Today's security briefing was arranged in 2 parts, starting with internal matters and moving on to external matters after a short break. Minister of Interior Lilia Scroff and Minister of Justice and Law Nia Morgan will join us for the first part, the law enforcement briefing. In the second part, the Minister of Defense Josef Valencia will join with a few high-ranking officials, including the Chief of the Armed Forces, Falcon Kruger. I opened the door. Lucia, Nia, and Lilia rose from their seats. Sir. Please, take your seats. Everyone in the room sat down except for Lucian. He put on his glasses and went through the documents in front of him. Shortly after, he raised his head to address the attendees. Mr. President, ladies, we will kick off today's meeting with the internal security briefing. I am assuming everyone has already been over the agenda. We have all of busy schedules, so without further ado, I'll jump into our first topic. As we feared, the political atmosphere has worsened. Reports around the country indicate that tensions are rising as we feared. What is the status on the Bernard Circus investigation? I have received news this morning that the investigation into the murder of Bernard Circus has concluded. Please enlighten us. The more we know, the better. Now, after further investigations and testimonies, we have confirmed the motive and also the events leading up to the shooting. A few days prior, members of the Red Youth initiated a violent attack on the Young Swords leader in Jen. We believe the Young Swords had called for revenge, leading to the death of Mr. Circus. Since he often spoke against the Young Swords and nationalist sentiments in the Assembly, he was a big target, not to mention his radical communist views. Radical? Swordland just lost a great writer. For what? It is unfortunate, but it was likely that an accident would happen. Lilia handed over the report and pointed to a highlighted section of the document. The investigation revealed a very troubling fact. The funding sources of the Red Youth have a clear link to United Quintana. Are you absolutely sure? Yes, we found the cash trail. Several Red Youth members with ties to United Quintana have been detained, and the information extracted from them points to a preparation of a communist uprising in Swordland. It isn't unusual for the superpowers to influence other nations, but I think this case is a little far-fetched. The left lacks popular support in Swordland. Nia eagerly lifted her hand. I motioned for her to speak. I went over the report in detail. It would be wrong to jump to conclusions about clear foreign interference yet. United Quintana has humanitarian and cultural ties to many countries, including Swordland. I also don't want to jump to conclusions. We shouldn't create a crisis with them. Nearly 3 decades ago, they funded General Ricard and tried to establish communist dictatorship in the country. If it was not for Colonel Soul, we would have seen the real crisis. She took a sip from her glass of water and continued. Our police chief, Carl Greiser, is linked to the funding channel to United Quintana Consulate in Benfield. As we all know, the enemies of Swordland are many, but we also have threats inside the country. Our country has always had issues. This is part of the job. If we give up essential freedoms to purchase temporary security, we deserve neither freedom nor security. This is debatable, but yes, we know what more security and surveillance costs this country under President Soul. Let's not forget that President Soul, God bless him, brought stability after a long period of bloodshed and chaos. Moving on. Our highest internal threat comes from the estimated 20,000-strong British Freedom Front, led by the imprisoned Doolin Arg. They are a banned political organization, now militant forces trying to incite racial violence. Are they supported by our Bluish citizens? To some extent. Luckily, they can attract a wide audience of Blues, but they could potentially attract thousands if anti-Bluish sentiment spreads in Solon again. Lilius pointed to page 3 in their report. Our intelligence intercepted 2 crates filled with weapons close to the Rumberg border. They're filled with military-grade Ka-74s. We expect that more have been smuggled in. A group of Blues were caught with these guns at a checkpoint not far away. The governor of Berger, Felix Braun, is already taking necessary measures to counter the threat.
Rumberg has been acting aggressive in the region for a long time. I am not surprised there is some to weaponize the Bluish people against us. This is worrying. Very worrying.
We need to keep level-headed with Rumberg. They're looking for reasons to take action. They will play dead or we play nice. It is battle we will lose. This is grave news, but we must be careful not to stoke the fires of anti-Bluish sentiment. Unfortunately, Governor Braun is directly causing tensions to increase with his increasingly anti-Bluish stance. I must remind you, Governor Braun is directly responsible for the arrest of Doolin Arg, the previous leader of the BFF. It's true that his methods can be extreme at times, but it was his policies that kept the region peaceful over the last decade. He is misusing the powers given to him by Tarkin Sol. The insane authority of the governor is surely a root cause.
It would be very difficult to revoke the special status of Berger under the current circumstances, Ms. Morgan. The presidents no longer have the authority Tarkin Sol enjoyed.
For now, yes, but with enough justification for it, it would be possible. Anyway, we'll be discussing this at a later time. No, I'd like to hear more. Well, as you know, Berger was given special status by Tarkin Sol after the full-scale uprising by the BFF against the Source government in 1935. Those couple years were disasters for Berger. Doolin Arg and the BFF declared war on us, openly attacked our people and occupied entire cities.
It was a massive uprising, but I'd like to point out that the longest time they controlled the city was 2 weeks. I wouldn't call that an occupation. Despite the arrest of Doolin Arg in 1944, the BFF ceasing its activities, the special status of the region was never revoked. Today, the special zone of Berger gives the government insane amounts of authority. He was in trouble with the law before for not following such government's authority. Unfortunately, Berger also has its own police forces directly commanded by Governor Braun. They are not part of my ministry and will cooperate when they are forced to do so. This is a problem. Even though our forces have the authority to serve in Berger, the special zone leaves the security of Berger mostly in the hands of the governor, and that leaves my hands tied.
Let's go with that one. The discrimination Berger suffers is maddening. We should find another way to revoke the special status of Berger one way or another. Yeah. That feels like the right choice. I don't know. That all seems brand new to me. I'll do my best, Mr. President. Nia gestured to Lilius. What is the second most important threat? It is the gang violence that is threatening the Northeast Island regions. 2 prominent organized crime families at war, and the potential for bloodshed is real. Why can't we just arrest them? The primary reason is deception and corruption. They have infiltrated several government offices and the police. That's how they can evade us. Lilius, I trust you can handle them. I'm doing my best, sir. Lilius Graf sighed deeply. I shall be honest with you. With our current capabilities, we may not be able to prevent the further arming separatists from maintaining order in Berger and Northeast Island. You promised to increase Solon's security and law enforcement budget. You must keep that promise. Yeah, I mean, we'll keep that promise, especially in light of all this information. We will rid our country of separatists and violent thugs if you can support us. I wish you'd stop using the word thugs, Lilius. The real problem is corruption, which is fueling gang violence. It's very likely the reason why these weapons are smuggled in. Higher budget could help us end that. Valid points. Corruption is the root of all evil, after all. Yeah, we can look into corruption once weapons have been found and the gang's been beaten. Just like the previous administrations, kicking the can down the road, this is what's destroying institutions.
I mean, unless something's changed, Lilius is corrupt as hell, so why would she want to, fight corruption? Lilius and Nia were openly scowling at each other. Lilius turned back to her notes. Well, this concludes the topics for the enchanter portion.
Thank you for the updates, Mrs. Croft and Mrs. Molnar. Yeah, thank you for the overview.
Have a good day. Until next time.
The two ministers left the room, took a short break before continuing to the second part. Upon invitation, Joseph Lancia, along with 3 high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Defense, walked into the room. One of the men was none other than General Kruger, the chief of the armed forces. Joseph made his way towards the table, while the others stood by the door.
Mr. President.
Joseph, welcome.
I brought General Kruger with me to the escalation on our borders.
General Kruger stepped forward and saluted. He had a strong jaw with sharp cheekbones. His tall stature, uniform, and medals, combined with his deep and intense stare, made him look threatening. He was in his 70s, yet he had a bulky body that was a result of his commando training. Not only was he the second most decorated officer in Soldan, he was also the longest serving. General Kruger.
Mr. President, it is an honor.
Joseph tapped his foot patiently. He seemed uneasy with the presence of another high-ranking officer in the room.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming to this significant gathering. Let's begin.
Joseph and Vulcan took their seats at the table, while the rest of the officers stood by the door.
Mr. President, the situation at the western and northern borders towards Rumberg is very tense. We are observing deployments of divisions close to our border. Rumberg has been acting increasingly expansive in the past decades and also interfered in Noia. Now they've turned their sights on us.
I trust the capability of our armed forces to handle any threats.
I can assure you our capabilities, but we don't have unlimited resources.
It seems like they want to increase the pressure both externally and internally.
Mr. President, if I may.
Please, General.
The picture is becoming clearer. The latest information from the interior about the weapons caches, and now there's active military buildup close to our borders. The entire situation was analyzed by General Staff, and our prediction is a future territorial incursion by Rumberg.
I think the threat's a bit exaggerated.
With all due respect, I think you're underestimating what we can face. I require an increase in the military budget to enlist more soldiers. Only then we can stand strong against our enemies. The enlarged armed forces will hold them at bay.
Vulcan's right. We do need an increase in the military budget, although we don't see eye to eye and exactly how to spend the budget. That much we agree on.
I have my concerns about Rumberg too. We need strong allies to withstand the superior power. They are our nemesis.
That's not a statement. Times are changing, war is coming, Mr. President, whether we like it or not. We must be prepared. During the election, you said nothing about focusing on the military. I asked you to reconsider an increase in the military budget. Future and safety Soldan is in your hands.
As you said before, times change, Joseph. We'll see. A smile brought a glimmer of hope on Joseph's face.
Our forces would crumble under a decrease, and Rumberg would be much more compelled to exploit weaknesses. Our country hasn't fought any invading force for 200 years. You cannot let it happen, Mr. President.
We should find regional allies like Volks and Lesbia to deter Rumberg. There are several options on the table.
I mean, all options should be considered.
They could be considered more pounded others. We can solve these issues ourselves.
We have no true friends outside these borders.
Everyone fell silent when a soldier entered the room and let Joseph Lancia know that a call had come through from the ministry.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Joseph left the room to answer. A few minutes later, he entered the room again. His expression had changed.
Mr. President, there's been a Bergen military activity close to the Nova border. I just spoke with the local commander. Vulcan, we should go to the ministry and get further updates from our branches.
Understood. Raising military readiness is the first call of action. If there is truly an extraordinary attempt, we will relay it to you immediately and wait for further orders, Mr. President.
Remain calm. Make sure not to escalate things further. Nobody wants a war. Except for maybe this guy.
We will exercise utmost caution, Mr. President.
Hey, Soldan.
I saluted and left the room. Rumberg was already testing us, and the reports from the interior indicate interference inside our borders. Communists, nationalists, British rebels, Rumberg expansionism? Oh, jeez, what was next? Sorlin had always been a key piece in the chessboard of the global rivalry between Akazi and United Cantana. But in the recent years, there's no such aggression from Rumberg, not at these levels at least. All it takes is one tiny spark to start the flames of war. The phone rang. Rumberg had decided to close their consulate in Lockhaven. Nice. Alright. Let's see, I don't know how I got to the global map, that's okay. Alright, so looks like we had a couple updates here. Let's see, so in our order, we have Nationwide Revolt as a red thing. That's kind of obvious. This country is currently facing widespread violent protests. Situations become increasingly tense. Fantastic. Diplomacy, diplomatic pressure. It's just basically saying that Rumberg's just being a bunch of dicks. Fantastic. Alright, so we have a couple of reports and some newspapers. Let's read the reports since I'm already right here. Alright, from Vezord, United Cantana Consulate helped protesters. Around midnight, red youth protesters clashed with young swords at the Vezord city center, resulting in many injuries. The counter-protesters were cornered in front of the United Cantana Consulate after they were pushed back by the police. The diplomatic mission opened its doors, and red youth members escaped inside. The police are still waiting outside the building for the return of red youth members. Coolio. Alright, from Suzerain, Rise of Golkandism, whatever that is, in rural areas of Bergia. Golkandism, a minor religious branch of Ruicisnerity, we'll go with that, and has gained a significant following in the city of Suzerain and the rural areas of Bergia, mainly due to limited access to education and employment opportunities. The sect offers a sense of community, purpose, and salvation through strict adherence to its doctrines. Bluish Freedom Front and foreign proselytizers are suspected to be behind the sudden increase in Golkandism. Many Bluish political leaders are recruiting members through grassroots campaigns, making Golkandism one of the most popular religious groups in the region. However, officials fear that the sect's strict rules and practices may lead to social unrest, warranting further investigation, development strategies, and collaboration with local community leaders to address the situation. That sounds kind of culty, maybe. I don't know. That's definitely new news. But in something that is not new, Arkazi develops first ICBM. Recent intelligence briefings have spotlighted Arkazi's military progress, underscoring the successful completion of the Missile 4, an intercontinental ballistic missile of significant power and range. Missile 4, with its estimated striking range spanning thousands of kilometers, represents a major leap in Arkazi's military technology. Its precision targeting systems allow for the destruction of targets at long distances, thereby escalating the potential threat Arkazi poses to territories well beyond the boundaries of Western Marcopa. Fantastic. Alright, let's check out the newspapers here. So we got 6 of them, so let's start off with Sordland's Day. Rumors of an infrastructure project. Anonymous sources have reported to Sordland's Day that several government officials have invited construction companies to meetings regarding a new major infrastructure project. If true, this is great news. Infrastructure in Sordland is lacking heavily needed investment. We hope that very qualified and experienced companies like Underhall Construction win the bid. Alright, for the economists, Underhall Construction once again number 1. Underhall Construction was once again picked as number 1 construction company of the year by the reputable Statistics Sordland. This is the 11th time the company is selected for the top spot in a row since Chris Shaw was appointed as the CEO. Veteran industry leader Shaw congratulated the employees first and foremost in a private company meeting held in a luxurious resort in Earlery. He also mentioned the recent addition of Heart of Sordland Organization CEO Marcel Caranti to the board of advisors helped immensely in this great achievement. At The Economists, we think now is a great time to invest in Underhall Construction as the current year's projection already shows a 13% increase in growth compared to the last year. Fantastic. Alright, Lockhaven Times. Gang violence claims young girl's life. A 15-year-old girl was shot to death in Narba as she walked her dog a few blocks away from her apartment. The police said the shooting, which occurred in an area affiliated with the gang Cornelli, was a reckless act of violence and the victim was not the target. The 15-year-old was shot at about 4:45 p.m., right before she was returning home. A man who witnessed the event told police that shooters yelled gang slogans at him on the street before he heard someone fire at least 10 shots, sources said. He later saw that the victim had been hit and called the authorities. Our sources report that the local police force of the region is understaffed and overworked, which adds to the current bleak situation. Alright, looks like we've got 2 here from the Radical. or the real truth behind economic crisis. We've all seen this scenario play before. Large corporate businesses, time and time again, receive money from the government under the disguise of helping the economy. But what about the people? Many in the neglected regions still do not have electricity or fresh water in their homes, and they are the lucky ones. There's a growing housing crisis, and people are on the streets begging for food. In the year 1954. And it's high time money is invested in us, people of Sordland, instead of armchair millionaires in luxurious villas. In 1927, never again. I was there when General Lunarin and Ricard clashed in the plains outside of Holsword, when the armies of Sword's people killed each other. I was there when Colonel Sol won the war after bombarding cities with Sword civilians inside them. We saw this great nation fall into bloodshed and chaos. We thought that we learned our nation and formed a new republic. One man's idea became the idea of the state, and he allowed it to be forced upon us. We were a generation who lived with Tarkeen Sol for most of our lives. However, this generation is different. Our kids have not experienced civil war or martial law. This generation is born at a changing time. We cannot allow the same conditions to return. We cannot forget when General Lunarin declared martial law in 1927, when his tanks rolled and murders took place. Those tanks cannot roll again. Bombs cannot fall again. Freedoms cannot be suspended again. 1927, never again. And from Geopolitica, Rumburg closes consulate. Rumburg has closed down its consulate in Sordland, one of the few Eastern Copen nations to have diplomatic ties with the Northern Kingdom. This comes right after the deployment of Rumburgian troops near the northern borders of Sordland. Rumburgian officials cite political unrest and uncertainty as the main reason for the closure, while raising concerns over security in the country. In Lockhaven, a diplomatic source said the Rumburgian flag has been lowered overnight, and that the diplomatic staff were expected to leave Sordland on Friday or Saturday. Many Lockhaveners were shocked as the 120-year-old Rumburg consulate closed. Dozens of citizens with Rumburgian relatives went out to protest against this action in the afternoon. It was not clear if the consulate closure is temporary or permanent, signaling a break in diplomatic ties which date from 1923. Our editor sees this situation as a further deterioration of relations between Sordland and Rumburg. This can be easily regarded as a one-sided provocation from the north. Yes, it can. Alright. So, let's head back to Holsword here. Let's just go at the end of the day, because it's the top one. Why not? It was late in the evening. Maroon Palace was finally getting somewhat quiet when I returned to my office at the top. I eagerly approached my chair and sprawled out on it. It had been an exhausting day, just like every day since I took office. Let's just relax. I stretched out my arms, leaned back in my chair, and took a deep breath. Holsword's skyline was daunting but beautiful. I glanced downwards out the window and saw a surge of the guards waiting for me by the main gate. I heard a couple of knocks on the door. My secretary, Olivia Suno, entered.
Mr. President, Mr. Tusk is here to see you. We had a meeting with the local spokesman. I'm so sorry for not giving you proper notice.
I was just about to leave. Maybe we postpone the meeting?
But he's already here, Mr. President. What do you want me to tell him?
After a moment, Mr. Tusk swaggered in the room. He just invited himself in like a dick. I had met Sordland's most prominent businessman once or twice, but never alone. He had large jowls, blindingly shiny shoes, and the air of someone who's used to getting his way.
Anything to drink, Mr. Tusk? Water? Whiskey?
Cognac, perfectly from before you were born, sweetheart.
I'll check the supply room.
Olivia backed out of the office, shooting me an apologetic look as she did so. Walter hung up his hat, which I could see was lined with mink. He fixed me with a long, hard stare, and then broke into a toothy grin. Good evening, Miss President. I'm here to congratulate you. We both sat down. My business partners and I wish you success of term as the leader of our nation. Thank you, Mr. Tusk. I had no chance to say this at the ball without panic. But we are very much looking forward to working with you. Thank you? I'd like to build a profitable relationship between us. That being said, there are some concerns of mine and the people I represent, which I would like to take this opportunity to clear up. Jeez, I'm listening. The ruined state of the economy is sorely influenced everyone. The recession's hit all of us hard. Walter pulled out a box of cigars from his jacket. These brought from Lesbia, the best cigars in the whole continent. Would you like to try one? Yeah, okay, why not? I grabbed one out of the pack. Walter lit it up with his huge engraved lighter.
Now we're talking, man. It was pleasure and business.
Walter grabbed himself a cigar and lit up as well. We looked out at the city scenery as we both puffed away.
I heard that you purchased stock from Armdine Industries, Narcosia. Smart buy. They're developing new gadgets. They're going to be profitable.
With risk comes reward. I expect a very good return on investment.
You have a keen eye for business. I'll buy a couple thousand shares too to expand my portfolio. Hope the investments pay off for both of us, President.
His eyes wandered away for a minute.
The assassination troubles between the left and right are worrying, but the recession is the root cause of those issues. For us, it is worrying to see that you've decided to promote a planned economy.
I don't mind that we disagree on the economy.
Neither do I, but you know how much capital Lilderberg represents. Even though you pursue this path, you need further market investments to boost the economy.
He leaned forward in his chair.
The high-speed rail investment was a great decision. Business logistics will improve and boost the economy when it's finished.
Yeah, I mean, the greater Holzord Gulf regions need a better transportation links.
Connecting our largest two economic powerhouses is the right call to make. We can be close allies. The group can up against Silverman out of their session, which would be the key problem to solve in your term and could even determine your re-election. Let's start with the gesture of goodwill. See the investment project contract be awarded to one of the three main contenders.
He pulled a check out of his pocket and slid it towards me on the table. My personal bank details were listed on it with a deposit of 500,000 rand ready to be transferred. This was 6 months of the president's salary.
If the contract were somehow awarded to Underhall Construction, they would not only work hard and deliver, but also do it on time. What do you think, Mr. Rain? Wouldn't that be good?
He put his index finger on the check. There was a noise by the door. Livia Suna was standing there, holding a tray with a bottle and 2 glasses. I'm so sorry, Mr. Tusk, but all I could find was 1942 Savini. I hope that's acceptable. She quickly put the tray on my desk and walked out. Tusk eyed her as she left.
Remind me to visit your office more often. Now, where were we? Do we have a deal?
Nah, not yet. We both know you can do better than that amount.
You're right about that. I'll make this my final offer.
He pulled out another check with a smile. This time, 1,000,000 rand was listed on the piece of paper.
Alright, I accept the offer.
He grinned and let out a laugh. The check was right between his hands. He pulled his hands back, and I took the check.
This deal also showed to the group that the administration has left the private sector behind.
We'll go with this one. It sounds slightly more ambiguous, because I fully plan on just taking the money and dicking him over. But I am very happy we came to an agreement today, Mr. Tusk.
Likewise, President Rain, it's a pleasure doing business with you. Oh, before I forget, the final token of my gratitude.
Walter pulls a box of cigars out of his pocket. The label reads, Vara Benvenuto.
Some of Lespia's finest, made by true craftsmen in the fabled city of San Verlone. You should visit someday, should the opportunity arise. We'll be in touch.
Walter stood up, grabbed his jacket, shook my hand before making his way towards the door. He smiled before closing the door and leaving. I gathered my things, prepared to finally head home. As I walked out, I noticed Livia still there, covering up her typewriter for the evening. If I may be so bold, Mr. President, did you accept his offer?
No, of course I didn't. How could you even ask me that?
The other girls have told me about all kinds of dealings going on during the Alfonso administration, and I wasn't sure if you were that kind of president.
I most certainly am not. I took his money, but I'm not gonna fulfill his demands. Screw that guy.
She and I took a moment to look out over the lights of the city before heading to the elevators. Awesome sauce. Alright. Boom. That gave us +2 personal wealth. That'll be quite handy later on. But that feels like as good a spot as any to go and call it for today. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.